Thank you very much, comrade, for the invitation. And also, I am looking forward to our conversation on this very important subject, which really defines our people in many, many different ways. It's a complete question because the land question is the identity question, is the cultural question, is the economic question, and even politics. And in as far as our people are landless, it means that in all those other aspects, we remain excluded. It's important to note that Umkhonto Wesizwe Party is formed precisely to address this massive historical question of injustice. Our people will recall that in 2017, when President Zuma was still president of the country, as a sitting state president, he made a call for all Black political parties in parliament to unite in order to address the land question. Because we do have the majority in parliament as Black people, we do have 2/3, even more. The problem is that political parties are formed by interests and funded by interests which are inimical to the Black agenda. And as a consequence of President Zuma calling for Black political parties to unite in order to address the land question, it was largely the reason why he was kicked out of power. Because Stellenbosch, which is the representative of land thieves, got a big fright because President Zuma defined radical economic transformation centrally as a question of the return of our land. Remember, he says that the biggest sin that has happened in this country arrived in 1652 with the first settlers led by Jan van Riebeeck. And that is the problem that we are now burdened to resolve. It is shocking and disappointing that 30 years into democracy, the land question is not addressed. In fact, the Department of Land Affairs operates to benefit once more the beneficiaries of land dispossession. You know, if you take example, the restitution process, which is of course a misnomer and a distortion of the land question because it says you can only claim back land which was dispossessed after 1913. So it pegs the land question at 1913 with the Native Land Act, which is of course a distortion. The land question dates back to 1652 with the arrival of Jan van Riebeeck and his gang. Now, if you take that program of restitution, just as an example of how this government continues to benefit the beneficiaries of land dispossession, is that the restitution process where if a people was to take financial compensation, if say this farm, the people for whatever reason are not returning back to their land, they're taking financial compensation, the state will pay them that money and the white farmer will keep the land. So in other words, this land restitution process is a process to buy land once again for these land thieves. It's a shocking process. And when you look at the amount of money that our people get when they take the financial compensation compared to what we pay those farmers where we buy back the land which they stole from us, it's shocking. The white farmers get millions and millions and millions. And our people, when they take financial compensation, they end up sometimes with 15,000 even as the money is divided into members of the household by generation. It's so the land program of this government will never address the land question of our people. That is why Umkhonto Wesizwe has in parliament this very year, put a private member's bill to amend Section 25 of the Constitution. Remember, Section 25 of the Constitution was the basis on which the National Party agreed to relinquish power. And that section says land in the hands of white people is protected by the Constitution. And if we want that land, we must buy it. It's based on the willing buyer, willing seller principle. And only if those white people want to sell the land, and it will be sold to us at a market value. That was the compromise of 1994. White people will only agree to relinquish power if we codified it in the Constitution that the land that they hold is protected property. So our land rights were in that way compromised and surrendered to land thieves. So this amendment of the Umkhonto we Sizwe Party, a private member's bill, it will be coming before the National Assembly soon. And again, there we will see which parties stand with the people, which parties stand for transformation, and which parties are against, on the basis of how they're going to vote on this amendment brought by Mkhonto we Sizwe as a private member's bill. Because if that amendment was to pass, it needs a two-thirds majority. We will redefine property relation in this country and bring about real change, which our people have been waiting for. As we know, the land policy of this state favors those who benefited from land dispossession. But there's further dispossession happening as we speak. Our people are being evicted from farms. Our people are evicted from communities. Even there in Kwatukuza, there is a big problem of land rights of our people. So you have a situation where the land policy of government benefits the same beneficiaries of colonial and apartheid land dispossession, and at the same time, dispossesses our people, both in terms of financial compensation and there's a continued removal of our people from land. You know, since 1994, over 2 million farm workers have been removed, have been evicted, have been forcibly removed from farms. 2 million, over 2 million. That is what Professor Richard Levine calls ethnic cleansing. You see, in most outskirts of townships, there's been mushrooming of squatter camps. If you're going to ask the people there where they come from, they'll tell you they've been evicted from white-owned farms where they used to work as farm workers. We sit here today with over 2 million of our people being evicted from land, mostly land which belongs to them. Because some of time, those farmers, they found them on those lands. And then the apartheid and colonial states would give land rights to the white people over the interests of our black people. So we have a big historical task to resolve as it relates to the land question. As we speak right now, the GNU does not have the will, nor does it have the policy to address the land question. It's a matter that we, as Umkhonto we Sizwe, and progressive civil society and progressive intellectuals have to put right again back into the national agenda. Because in South Africa, the land question has become a political football. Just before the elections, all these parties talk about the land question. Now people vote for them and they forget about the land question. So we as Umkhonto we Sizwe have put the land question consistently on the table until it is addressed.
Comrade Andile, can I ask you to share your opinion on what you feel the CR17 campaign where businesses had paid to influence the result of the elective conference in 2017. And can I ask if, in your view, that what does that have to do with the difficulties of not obtaining a two-thirds vote on the question of land?
You see, President Zuma, when he declared radical economic transformation as a sitting state president in 2017, he gave white monopoly capital such a big fright that they then went out to capture the ANC, because the ANC remains the biggest tool and instrument for possible transformation. And if President Zuma was still president, or the candidate of radical economic transformation had triumphed against Cyril Ramaphosa, we will today be having a government that pushes radical economic transformation. So white monopoly capital, global capital imperialism, was frightened by President Zuma's left move, including this consolidation of the BRICS process. And as a result of that, white monopoly capital mobilized R1 billion and gave it to Cyril Ramaphosa to buy the ANC conference in order to become president. So white capital put itself inside the ANC through money, and it was able to capture the ANC. So it makes sense then that President Zuma later said he's forming Umkhonto weSizwe because the ANC has been taken over by the oppressor, and now it is a tool to continue the oppression of Black people. But that is why the Stellenbosch mafia, as you call them, that is white monopoly capital, took out that money to undermine the radical economic transformation agenda, which today, that move by white capital, making sure that Ramaphosa become president, it gave us the government of national unity, which of course is ideologically led by the Democratic Alliance. Ramaphosa recently had told our people that we need to learn from the Democratic Alliance. He admires it because ideologically he is led by the Democratic Alliance. And that is why we saw under Ramaphosa the intensification of a crisis of poverty amongst our people, the intensification of the crisis of unemployment, and the basic undermining of state institutions. Our state has become an instrument for the mafia, and it become so corrupt, as we know from General Mkwananzi. It is not just the politicians, it is the judiciary, it is the executive, the police services itself is corrupted. That corruption starts from the corruption of Cyril Ramaphosa, engineered by Stellenbosch, bringing in money in that manner into politics in order to drive white monopoly capital agenda. And it was mainly to arrest the program of radical economic transformation. And part of it, it was the using of the judiciary and the media and civil society and opposition parties. So the corruption that is now today manifest starts from that moment when the state was used, the state agencies were manipulated, the judiciary was mobilized, the media was mobilized, civil society, opposition parties, all of these entities were corrupted by white monopoly capital in its battle against the radical economic transformation agenda of President Zuma. We are in this crisis today, which has become normalized and endemic in all institutions of society, precisely because of the fight to try to stop radical economic transformation and by corrupting every facet of the South African society.
Oh, you couldn't have explained it in a better and clearer manner. Thank you for that, Andile. One more question, and maybe there will be other questions arising after this answer. What about minerals? How can you explain to people the role that minerals have played in keeping the land in the hands of the land thieves? I think it's common knowledge that South Africa is a very extremely wealthy country. We have gold, we have diamonds, platinum, magnesium, manganese, um, coal, uh, iron ore, and even rare earth minerals. So we are so wealthy in minerals, but it is not South Africans who share any part of that wealth. And I'm sure you can explain and answer that question in a much clearer way than I am stating it.
You see, the best way to understand the disconnect between our people and the massive natural resources that God has given us. Not a single person in South Africa should go to bed hungry on the basis of the amount of wealth that is here in our country. But the example I normally try to use to indicate how we have been alienated from the national wealth is, when we watch the news and they come to economic indicators, most of us switch off the television or change the channel. We don't want to hear what is the price of gold, what is the price of platinum, because we have no relationship whatsoever with those mineral resources. By the way, South Africa has the largest deposit of platinum on earth. So just from that one mineral, we could resolve the problems of poverty. But the whole colonial and apartheid project has made sure that these natural resources, this natural wealth, this wealth of the nation is usurped by a minority. By the way, part of land dispossession was intensified after the discovery of gold and gold and diamonds. The settler colonial regime wanted cheap labor from our people. And in as far as we still had our land, we will not go and work in the mines. So they actually intensify land dispossession to force us into becoming workers to work for them in those mines. And that is why the migrant labor system has become a reality of South Africa. We see this impact with the road accident every major holiday seasons because our people are flocking back to their hinterland, their homelands where they come from. That reality of the migrant labor system is still persists today. We go into the mines, into those cities, to go into the belly of the earth to dig for these minerals, and they are promptly exported, and the money is taken by the white minority settler capital, sharing it with global capital. That system is intact. And in as far as President Zuma tried, people must go and read the mining charter, which President Zuma produced under Minister Msebenzi Zwane. That mining charter said within a year, 30% of ownership of the mines must reside within black people. And it went on to define the transformation of boards of all these mines. It said it must be over 50% black owned. And not only that, women and the youth must be represented, including the disabled. It was one of the biggest weapons that President Zuma introduced, which frightened white monopoly capital because it was a clear call for sharing in the wealth of the nation. White capital would not accept that. And that is partly why they went against President Zuma. That challenge is still there. We are not going to deal with poverty in this country until we deal with who owns the wealth of the nation. And it is an indictment on all of us that 30 years into democracy, the wealth of the nation is still in the hands of a white minority colonial settler population. This must be changed, and it must be changed quite quickly to deal with precisely the triple challenges that everybody's talking about: unemployment, poverty, and inequality. We are not going to be able, because part of how we created these triple challenges, it is in the ownership of the means of production. That is the means of production, which is land, which is the mining sector, and of course finance capital. Black people have no serious stake in the banking system, and that is why we're calling for the transformation of the Reserve Bank and the establishment of a state bank, so that our people can directly benefit from the finance capital sector as well. That goes for manufacturing. And when we deal with these questions, we'll also deal with the question of unemployment. Because once we have the land, we can create about 5 million jobs overnight in the agricultural sector, well paying jobs. Right now, it's shocking. As part of this dispossession by democratic means, dispossession under the democratic order, if you look at another policy of government called the farm worker equity schemes. So the state provides money to buy equity in existing farms for farm workers. It's called the farm worker equity schemes. It is shocking that white farmers will sign papers of ownership to these farm workers, take the money, and then evict those farm workers. This is happening across the country where these so-called share equity schemes have been implemented. It has been a process of literally giving money, free money to white workers, white farm owners, and continue as usual. But that shows you the lack of commitment to transformation by this government and the power they continue to give to the white settler minority. And the white settler minority is the biggest beneficiary, as we can see, of take SAA, as we said. 90% of procurement in SAA goes to white capital, over 90%. So the biggest beneficiaries of this transition has been white capital. The largest number of millionaires, white millionaires, have been created under the democratic order. So this order has been very, very disadvantageous to the black majority, but it has benefited once more the white minority settler population. And it is so unthankful. White people in this country, they have not even said they are sorry for colonialism or apartheid. They have not even said, here is a fund to pay for reparations for the ills that we have committed against our fellow country people. They've not done so. They've not even said a mere sorry. So we are burdened with the question of transforming society and taking care of our people, whose misfortune is a direct creation of this settler minority population. But we are not taking this task very seriously. That is why a number of our leaders allow themselves to be sold, to be bought rather. And we see this by the proliferation of political parties. Remember, one of the biggest weapons that we have is our numerical strength, which can be turned into political power. And if we can unite as Black people, use our strength to become political capital to be able to transform society. But through these formations of many small political parties, they are fracturing this big weapon that we have, which is our numerical strength, which can be transformed into political strength and real Black power to make sure that we transform this society.
So clearly put, Comrade Andile. I think you have already spoken to the people of Magabula. I was also going to convey the situation that a settlement here in Pietermaritzburg face. They called Saka. They are an informal settlement side by side next to a huge game farm. So, can you imagine where people live one on top of the other, where there's no privacy? And people, it is people who have less space and face greater difficulties and obstacles in life than the giraffe and the kudu and the buck right near them. Side by side to the game farm, they watch the animals have more space than people. And I must explain to you that one house set alight in that squatter camp, and then it was like 30 or 40 houses who were destroyed. Live wires lying in pools of water, children running over them, and no help whatsoever. We have a very callous, uncaring, don't care government, local government, and National Department of Human Settlement as well, who do nothing to lift a finger to come to the attention and come to the help of those people. Not even an attempt to expropriate a portion, half of the land that the giraffe and the kudu and the buck live. Had one thing, one move, one decision could make the lives of those people in Saka. But sadly, we will not get it under the